Hi, Jack from Mean Guys Life. Another episode of the Ask Jack Show. Thanks for tuning in. And today, we're talking, what size bike should I get? Great comment, great question from a viewer, two viewers actually, on a video we did, what bike should I get? So let me just kind of read you this question here. A Mr. or Mrs. AIVARB writes, great vid. Can you talk about bike sizing, especially for those in between sizes? Great question. Wonderful question. And another guy chimes in here, Stefano Mancini. That's one of those names that's like a real good cycling name. Stefano Mancini off the front. Great name. Anyway, Stefano says, yes, great question. I'm in the same situation, unless I get a Pinarello, the winningest bikes in the world, the only brand with an in-between size. I wish there was like a golden rule that I knew about or could tell you. There's not. And I think I'd be doing you a disservice if I kind of try to give a one-size-fits-all solution to this question. I think really the best I could do for you guys is to tell you the factors involved. What this question really comes down to is how the bike feels and handles. And it's a question of weight distribution. So if you're designing a race car, you're an auto designer, you want to balance the weight out over the four wheels. That's where the car is going to roll at its fastest. It's similar for your bike, and there's a good way for you to kind of discover the effects of weight distribution. So you're riding, you're coasting along, and while you're coasting, stand up. And you're going to stand up three different ways. You're going to stand up forward, right? You're going to put a lot of weight on the front wheel and stand up. You're going to stand up and push your weight to the back, stand straight up. And what you're going to notice is, depending on how you weight the bike when you stand, it's going to affect the bike's momentum. You're going to find certain things you do have a stall point because you change the weight distribution over the wheels, and now the bike rolls differently. With bikes, it's not like a 50-50 weight distribution. You've got more weight over the rear wheel. So 55, 45, 60, 40, something like that is typical for a bike design. That's rolling. That's your momentum. That's the bike's roll. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the way the bike handles. Think of something like the System 6 that we talked about in How to Buy a Bike. Very highly maneuverable bike. Very fast maneuvering bike. You want to dampen the steering response on that bike. Well, if you have a longer stem and you put more weight on the front wheel, it's going to dampen the steering. A longer stem takes more input to move, and having more weight on the front wheel kind of pins that wheel down a little bit. So those two things slow down the steering response. So you've got a bike like the System 6, and you appreciate all the aerodynamic benefits of it, but it's a little bit on the maneuverable side for you. Well, you can change the weight distribution towards the front end a little bit more, put more weight on the front wheel, longer stem, and that's going to tamp down the responsiveness of the front end. Take a bike like the Super 6 Evo, the other bike in How to Buy a Bike, the all-arounder that has a very stable ride. Well, if you wanted to liven that up a little bit, you could move some of your weight to the rear. You have a shorter stem, you have less weight on the front wheel, and the steering is going to feel a little quicker. Also, if you watch How to Buy a Bike, it's a fine line. Because if it's too much, like I had my bars too high, I had too much weight on the rear wheel, and the front wheel wouldn't grab, right? So what you're doing with your kind of relative size to the bike, your size in relation to the bike, is you're changing weight distribution, which changes the roll and changes the handling. So if you want the bike to feel quicker, given your size, if you go down to a smaller size and the bike has a shorter wheelbase, but you're the same size as you were, the bike's going to feel quicker. It's going to be more maneuverable. If you like, man, this bike's kind of squirrely. I like the bike, but would like to tone the steering down a little bit. Well, then you could go a size up if you're in between sizes. But in terms of your biomechanical position, typically a whole size is going to be fine for you finding your biomechanical position. Kind of where this theory falls apart is setback, because you need to get the relation of the bottom bracket to your pelvis correct, or you could have biomechanical issues, knee pain or something. So that's kind of the limiting factor in terms of the size bike you get, is getting that setback correct. And then there's some play there. You can play around with that a little bit in terms of your fore and aft position, in terms of the handling. So take like the Super 6 Evo, for instance, stable bike. The thing is, I liked everything about the bike, but for me, it felt slow in left to right, like the leaning it over one way to the other. That transition felt slow to me. So what I did was I found some wheels that have a very quick edge, right? They edge left to right very quickly. And so that, for me, helped me tune the ride to the way I like it. What you're doing is you're taking your biomechanics and you're putting it on a given bike to tune that bike by its size to give you the ride feel you prefer. And if you want to go to the next level and you want to have a bike where you go barreling into that downhill sweeper and you just have so much confidence in this bike because you're set up on it right, and when you rail through that radius, you feel like so secure, so confident that this front wheel is going to stay tracking and it's not going to wash out on you, and you're not going to have rear wheel slip. You know what I mean? When you just have this very solid, confident feel. It's not just the size of the bike that does that. It's the layup, it's the wheel and tire package, it's the geometry. I think that the best thing you could do is work with a fitter that knows about the biomechanics, putting the length of your limbs in the correct position, given the bike from the seat to the bars to the crank, all that stuff. A lot of bike fitters know that, but how many of them know about the momentum factor, how the bike rolls and moving your fore and aft? So if you can find a bike fitter that has kind of knowledge in both of those camps, I think that's going to be your best bet. It's a lot easier when you have that objective eye that can kind of take into account the way you're sitting on the bike, and they know about the mechanics of rolling weight distribution and all that stuff. That's your best bet. If you like our content, if you think it's helpful, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss an episode of The Ask Jack Show. Thanks for watching. You like this set? You like the blue? This is probably the last show you're going to see Jack sitting in front of a huge roll of paper. We're going to up the game. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. You don't want to miss an episode of The Ask Jack Show. Thanks for watching.